The emergency room was loud, crowded, and unforgiving. Stretchers rolled past in a blur. Nurses shouted vitals over the noise of monitors. Doctors moved fast, clipped, focused only on the patients in front of them. And standing quietly against the wall, holding a thin folder to her chest, was Elena Morales. The hospital translator, invisible, ignored, exactly how everyone expected her to be. She had been there for hours already, called in to help families who didn't speak English well enough to understand what was happening to the people they loved. Most of the staff barely acknowledged her presence. To them, she was just support, a voice, a tool, someone you waved over when paperwork got confusing, then waved away again. No one in that ER thought she mattered beyond that, and that was the mistake. Because while the room buzzed with routine chaos, something was already going wrong. A young boy lay on a bed near the center of the unit, no older than 8. His breathing was shallow, uneven. His heart rate spiked, then dipped, then spiked again. The doctors spoke fast, throwing out terms and decisions, but the boy's parents stood frozen on the other side of the curtain, terror written across their faces. They didn't understand the words. They didn't understand the urgency. They only understood fear. A nurse finally gestured toward Elena without even looking at her. "Can you explain what's happening to them?" she said, already turning away. Elena nodded and stepped forward, her movements calm, controlled. She knelt slightly to be at eye level with the parents, her voice low and steady as she translated. The parents clung to every word. The boy's mother began to cry softly. The father asked questions, rapid, panicked ones, and Elena translated them back to the doctor with exact precision. But then, something changed. As Elena listened, her eyes flicked briefly toward the child. Just for a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. But the way her posture shifted, subtle, almost instinctive, wasn't the posture of a translator waiting for instructions. It was the posture of someone assessing a situation. The boy began to thrash weakly against the bed, his breathing worsening. Alarms started to rise in pitch. A resident muttered something about sedation. Another doctor disagreed. Voices overlapped. Tension climbed. And Elena spoke again. Not loudly, not urgently. Just one short sentence, translated for the parents, but it made the boy's eyes snap toward her. His movements slowed. His breathing steadied, just a little. A nurse frowned. "What did you say to him?" she asked, distracted. Elena answered simply. "I told him to listen to my voice." That should have been the end of it. A coincidence. A lucky moment. But then Elena said something else, quietly, in the boy's language. Not a translation this time. It was a phrase none of the medical staff recognized. The boy's eyes widened. His heart rate dropped. The monitors stabilized just enough to be noticeable. One of the doctors looked over, confused. What did she just say? Before anyone could respond, the double doors at the far end of the ER slid open with force. 2 men in dark jackets stepped inside, their presence instantly cutting through the noise. No hospital badges, no scrubs. One of them raised a hand, palm out. "Freeze the room," he said, his voice calm but carrying authority. The chaos slowed. Not because anyone was told to stop, but because everyone felt they should. The man's eyes scanned the ER once, quickly, then locked onto Elena. He walked straight toward her, past doctors, past nurses, past security. And then he stopped in front of her. Every sound seemed to dull as he spoke. "Ma'am," he said, nodding once. "By order of the federal government, we need you now." Elena didn't look surprised. She handed the folder to the nearest nurse, rose to her feet, and met his gaze. "Yes," she said quietly. And when the second agent spoke her name, not the one on her badge, but the one no one in that hospital had ever heard, the entire ER realized something terrifying and unbelievable at the same time. They hadn't been ignoring a translator. They'd been ignoring someone they were never meant to see. Elena didn't react when the agent said the name. No widening of the eyes. No sharp intake of breath. Just a controlled stillness, the kind that comes from years of training where surprise is a liability. But everyone else felt it. The way the agent said it, low, precise, unmistakably rehearsed, made it clear that this wasn't a mistake. A senior physician stepped forward, confusion edging into his voice. "I'm sorry, who are you people? This is a medical—" The agent didn't look at him. His attention stayed fixed on Elena. We don't have time, he said. Condition echo has been confirmed. That phrase meant nothing to the staff, but Elena's jaw tightened, just barely. She glanced once at the boy on the bed. The monitors were still unstable, though better than before. Then she nodded. How long? She asked. Minutes, the second agent replied. If that... The head nurse crossed her arms, irritation rising. You can't just walk in here and pull staff during an active case. Elena turned to her, not sharply, not defensively, but with a level of authority that instantly quieted the room. I'm not staff, she said. Not today. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. The boy suddenly cried out again, his body stiffening. The alarms spiked. A doctor rushed forward, calling for medication. The room snapped back into motion, but Elena was already moving. She stepped to the bedside and spoke again in that same unfamiliar language. Not loud, not frantic, measured. The boy's eyes searched for her. His breathing hitched, then slowed. What language is that? A resident whispered. Elena didn't answer. One of the agents leaned closer to the attending physician. You need to listen to her, he said quietly. She's the reason your patient is still conscious. The doctor bristled. She's a translator. The agent finally looked at him. His gaze was flat. She's a federal asset with medical authority that outranks everyone in this room. Silence dropped hard. Elena placed 2 fingers lightly on the boy's wrist, counting. Her expression shifted, not emotional, not fearful, but analytical. He's reacting to the code, she said. That confirms neural recognition. You sedate him now, you lose the window. The doctor hesitated. Years of training screamed against taking orders from someone without a lab coat. The boy's heart rate spiked again. Doctor, Elena said calmly, if you don't adjust the dosage protocol, he arrests in under 60 seconds. How could you possibly know that? The doctor snapped. Elena met his eyes. Because this isn't the first time I've seen it, the monitor screamed. The doctor swore under his breath and waved the nurse back. Hold the sedative. Elena leaned close to the boy's ear and spoke again. The same strange phrases. Slow, rhythmic, almost like instructions woven into reassurance. The boy's body relaxed, his pulse steadied. Around them, the ER watched in stunned silence. The head nurse whispered, What is she saying to him? The agent answered for her. She's keeping him alive. As if summoned by the tension, hospital security finally arrived. 2 guards jogging in, hands hovering near their belts. One of them froze when he saw Elena. Wait, he muttered. I know her. Elena didn't look back. The first agent checked his watch. We're out of time. If we don't extract her now, this goes sideways. Elena straightened and looked at the doctor again. You need to prep for rapid imaging and isolate the parents. No questions. I'll be back. You're just leaving? The doctor demanded. For now, she said. If I don't, you lose more than 1 patient today. The words chilled the room. As she turned to follow the agents, the boy's mother cried out, grabbing Elena's sleeve. Elena stopped instantly, knelt and spoke softly, this time translating every word. He's strong, she told her, and he's not alone. I promise. The mother nodded, tears streaming, trusting her completely. Elena stood and walked with the agents toward the exit. As they reached the doors, one of the junior doctors finally found his voice. Who is she? The second agent glanced back once. She's the reason certain people don't disappear when the government needs answers. The doors slid shut behind them. And in the ER they left behind, every single person realized the same thing at once. The quiet translator they had ignored wasn't pulled into something dangerous. She had been holding something dangerous at bay the entire time, and now, whatever it was, had just followed her out. The corridor outside the ER felt colder, quieter, like a different world entirely. The moment the doors sealed behind them, the agent's pace changed. No rush, no panic, just controlled urgency. Elena matched it without effort, her steps measured, her breathing steady, as if this hallway were no different from any other place she'd ever walked. You shouldn't have activated the code in front of civilians, the first agent said, not accusing, just stating fact. I didn't, Elena replied. The child did. I only confirmed it. The second agent glanced at her, impressed despite himself. He shouldn't even know those phrases. He shouldn't be alive, either. Elena said. But here we are. They turned a corner, passing staff who instinctively stepped aside without knowing why. Authority radiated off the agents, and off Elena now, though her badge still said Translator. What's the source? She asked. Unconfirmed exposure, the first agent said. Parents traveled through 3 ports in 6 weeks. 1 flagged location. We thought it was dormant. Elena exhaled slowly. It never is. They stopped outside a restricted elevator. One agent swiped a card. The doors opened. Inside, Elena finally allowed herself a moment to think about the boy, the way his pupils had reacted, the way his breathing had shifted when she spoke the code. It wasn't random. It never was. You realize, the second agent said, if the hospital finds out what he is. They won't, Elena interrupted. They'll see a rare neurological episode. They'll publish a paper. They'll move on. And you? Elena looked straight ahead as the elevator descended. I'll make sure he gets to move on, too. The elevator doors opened into a dim underground corridor. No hospital signage, no patients, just concrete and security cameras. As they walked, the first agent lowered his voice. We weren't expecting you to be on site when this surfaced. I wasn't expecting it to surface at all, Elena said. Which means someone rushed, that someone is already contained. Elena stopped walking. Both agents halted instantly. Contained isn't neutralized, she said. And if they rushed, they're afraid. The first agent nodded once. That's why we need you. They reached a steel door marked only with a number. The agent keyed in a code, then paused. There's something else, he said. The boy wasn't the only trigger. Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. Who else? The agent hesitated for half a second too long. Elena felt it then, that familiar, unwelcome shift in the air. Not who, she corrected. Where? The agent met her gaze. The ICU. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Then we're already late, she said. And somewhere above them, in a hospital that thought the danger had walked out its doors, something invisible was just beginning to wake up. Elena turned back toward the elevator before either agent could stop her. Call it in, she said. Now. We're under orders. The second agent began. Your orders were written assuming 1 trigger, Elena cut in, her voice still calm. You just told me there are 2. The first agent didn't argue. He lifted his radio and spoke in clipped code, words that meant nothing to anyone who might overhear, and everything to the people listening. The corridor lights dimmed slightly as systems shifted into a higher security state. The elevator doors opened again, and this time Elena stepped in first. As they rose, her mind replayed the ICU in fragments, the spacing of beds, the airflow, the way the alarms had overlapped. Most people heard noise. She heard patterns, and patterns told her one thing clearly. The boy hadn't been the source. The doors slid open onto the ICU floor, and the atmosphere had changed. Not chaotic, tense. Nurses spoke quieter. Doctors moved faster, the kind of tension that came from something you couldn't name but couldn't ignore either. Elena scanned the room instantly, her eyes locked onto a bed near the far wall. An elderly man, oxygen mask fogging unevenly, heart rate steady but too steady. That one, she said. A resident frowned. He's stable. He's masking, Elena replied, and he's listening, as if on cue. The man's fingers twitched. The head nurse stiffened. How could he understand anything? He hasn't spoken all day. Elena stepped closer, lowering her voice, choosing her words with surgical care. He doesn't need to speak. He only needs to recognize. She spoke the code again, shorter this time. The man's eyes snapped open. Monitors spiked. A doctor cursed under his breath. That's not possible. Elena didn't look away from the patient. It is when someone taught him how to wait. The agents moved into position without being told, quietly sealing exits. And for the first time since Elena had arrived that morning as just a translator, the ICU staff understood something terrifying. Whatever they were dealing with had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Elena crouched slightly, letting her presence anchor the room. Her voice, low and steady, carried the same strange cadence as before, the code rolling off her tongue like it had been rehearsed 1,000 times. The elderly patient's fingers twitched again, but now with intention, as if following invisible instructions. Nurses froze mid-step, unsure whether to intervene or step back. Doctors glanced at each other, the uncertainty clear on their faces. One resident whispered, "How is this possible? He hasn't responded all day." Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes met the patient's, and the recognition passed between them in silence. The boy's father and the elderly man's daughter watched from behind the curtain, unaware of the full significance, yet sensing that someone invisible until now, was in control of life itself. The first agent leaned closer to Elena, voice almost a murmur. "If this escalates, we may not have time for conventional measures." "I know," Elena replied. Her fingers brushed the patient's wrist, tracing the subtle pulse patterns, adjusting her tone just slightly. Monitors began to stabilize in sync. Machines beeped less urgently. The tension in the room dropped fractionally, as if the life-threatening energy had been siphoned away by her presence alone. Doctors began to breathe again, realizing they hadn't lost control. They'd been guided. A nurse finally spoke, awe creeping into her voice. She's doing more than translating. She's controlling the situation." Elena rose, straightening her back, calm but authoritative. She looked around the ICU once, assessing, calculating. The agents flanked her, ready to move, but she allowed herself a small, deliberate pause. It was enough for everyone in the room to feel the full weight of the realization. The quiet translator they'd ignored, the one who seemed invisible, was far more than anyone could have imagined. And in that moment, as alarms finally returned to their normal rhythm, the room understood the truth. Elena Morales wasn't just a translator. She was the unseen hand guiding the chaos, and any doubt about her power, her authority, and her skill had just been erased completely. Elena didn't give anyone a chance to question her authority. She moved with purpose, guiding the agents and the ICU staff in ways that felt instinctive but were calculated down to the second. Every step, every word, every gesture was deliberate, designed to maintain control without raising panic. The room was no longer chaotic. It was tense, focused, alive with anticipation. She approached the elderly patient again, lowering her voice slightly. The code she spoke now was more precise, layered with inflections only the trained could recognize. The man's eyes sharpened, his fingers responding with exact timing. The monitors, once spiking erratically, now reflected a rhythm that signaled stability. Doctors and nurses watched, half in disbelief, half in awe. One nurse whispered to another, "She's not just translating, she's directing." Elena caught the words but didn't acknowledge them. She was focused entirely on the signals, the subtle movements, the hidden cues that told her what needed to happen next. The boy from earlier shifted slightly, and she adjusted her tone, ensuring both patients remained synchronized in their responses. The first agent glanced at her, nodding imperceptibly. "Impressive," he said softly. "I didn't think anyone could stabilize both simultaneously." "I've been trained for scenarios they won't even write about in textbooks," Elena replied. Her gaze didn't leave the patients. "They think I'm just a translator. That's exactly what makes this work." A doctor stepped closer, curiosity overtaking caution. How are you doing this?" Elena finally looked at him, her expression calm, measured, unflinching. "Because what you see as chaos, I see as pattern, and patterns can be guided." The room absorbed the words. Every person present realized it. The quiet woman they had ignored, the translator they had dismissed, was now the central figure in control of life and death within the ICU. Authority, skill, and precision radiated from her, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that the events unfolding were beyond ordinary human capability. And for the first time that day, the entire ER understood one undeniable truth: Elena Morales was not a bystander. She was the unseen force that had just kept 2 lives from slipping away. Elena finally stood upright, letting the full weight of her presence fill the ICU. The monitors beeped steadily now, a rhythm that felt almost deliberate, almost like the room itself had taken a collective breath. Doctors and nurses exchanged glances, disbelief still lingering, but a new awareness settling in, a recognition that this quiet translator was operating on a level far beyond what anyone had imagined. The first agent stepped forward, clearing his throat. "We need to move," he said, but there was no command in his tone, only acknowledgement. Elena nodded and moved toward the exit, the agents flanking her as they had all along. Every staff member instinctively gave space, as though they were part of a silent choreography, their previous skepticism replaced with cautious respect. As they walked, Elena kept her focus, scanning, calculating. Every patient in the ICU was stable now, yet she remained vigilant. She knew the boy's earlier distress had been just one thread in a larger pattern. One misstep, and the delicate balance could unravel. She spoke quietly to the agents, her voice calm but carrying authority. "We're not finished. There's another layer they won't see coming. I need access to the secured wing." The second agent nodded, following her lead. "All systems are ready. Security has been temporarily rerouted. No one will intercept us." Elena's gaze returned briefly to the ER staff, who watched silently from behind the glass panels. Their expressions were a mix of awe, confusion, and realization. They had underestimated her completely. And now, in those brief moments, the power dynamics in the room had shifted entirely. "Tell them nothing," she said softly, almost to herself, but the agents heard. "They only need to know what they need to survive the moment. The rest, they'll figure out on their own." Her calm resolve was infectious. The agents adjusted their pace to match hers. Every step, every movement carried the authority of someone who had been underestimated for years, someone whose silence had concealed unmatched skill. In that silent, tense corridor, it became undeniable. Elena Morales was not merely a translator. She was a force, a guardian, and the unseen hand orchestrating life and death with precision that no one else could comprehend. The secured wing loomed ahead, its heavy doors reinforced and guarded. Yet Elena approached without hesitation. Her steps were steady, deliberate, each one carrying the confidence of someone who had navigated far more dangerous corridors than these. The agents flanked her, silent and vigilant, aware that she was the center of this operation, even if they were the ones with badges and clearance. As the doors slid open, a rush of cool, controlled air greeted them. The lighting was dim, shadows stretching across the walls, but Elena's eyes adapted instantly. She moved toward a bank of monitors, each displaying critical readings and encrypted data streams. Her hands hovered briefly over the panels, reading the information as if it were written in a language only she could understand. "We've contained the immediate threat," the first agent said quietly, "but the secondary signals indicate another spike in neural activity." Elena didn't flinch. "I anticipated as much," she said. "That's why I needed access here." She adjusted a dial, entering a sequence that only she knew. The screens shifted, highlighting patterns that would have been invisible to anyone else. The boy in the ICU, the elderly patient, even the surrounding wards. They were all connected in subtle ways, strands of data that indicated risk, timing, and responses. The agents watched, silently impressed, as Elena interpreted and manipulated the patterns with fluid precision. "She's not just stabilizing patients," one whispered. "She's predicting outcomes before they happen." A subtle alert sounded from one of the monitors. Elena leaned in, reading the code with quick, sharp motions. "Secondary exposure in Sector 5, she said. "If we don't act now, containment fails." Without hesitation, she gestured for the agents to follow, moving toward the elevators that led to the critical sector. The path was precise, deliberate, and measured. She didn't look back. The ICU, the staff, and the patients were in her hands, guided invisibly but completely. And as they descended toward the next crisis, the agents understood fully. The woman they had dismissed as a translator was not only capable of saving lives, she was orchestrating the survival of an entire system, her quiet authority rewriting everything the hospital thought it knew about power, skill, and heroism. Elena Morales was no longer invisible. She had become the force everyone relied upon, though few would ever truly see the depth of her reach. And as the doors closed behind Elena and the agents, the ICU returned to its usual rhythm, but nothing inside those walls would ever be the same. The staff who had dismissed her, laughed at her, or ignored her presence now carried a quiet, undeniable respect for the woman who had saved lives without needing anyone to notice her. It was a reminder that true strength isn't about titles, badges, or recognition. It's measured in patience, composure, and action when it matters most. Sometimes the people we overlook hold the power to change everything in an instant, and if this story has shown you anything, it's that heroes are often hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment to reveal their courage. Share this video with someone who could use a reminder that strength comes in unexpected forms. Comment below to let us know which part of Elena's story amazed you the most, and hit subscribe so you never miss another incredible story of quiet bravery that proves the most ordinary people can be extraordinary when it counts.